Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
After he had fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, he came toward them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once Jesus spoke to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I want to talk to you this morning about an amazing, amazing saint. A saint that isn't really talked about very often. We don't hear much about him, but I think one of the greatest saints that we have. You may have heard of him, maybe not. St. Damien of Molokai. He was born in 1840, died in 1889, I believe. And he felt called to be, he's from Belgium, and he felt called to be a missionary, joined a religious order that did missionary work in Hawaii. So that was an amazing step of faith, a leap of faith to begin with. And then when he was there, and after he was ordained, they said, "We need to have volunteers." There are a group of lepers. There was a leper colony on Molokai, and they were looking for volunteers. 4 people raised their hand. The first one that stood up was Damien. And Damien originally was going for 3 months, and he was there 16 years. So that was a pretty amazing leap of faith. And even though he didn't walk on water to get to Molokai, a boat brought him. In a sense, he was like Peter, who heard the call of Jesus, "Come." And he didn't really know what to expect when he got there, but when he arrived, it was like the Holy Spirit, the flames of fire of love of the Holy Spirit completely filled him. He truly fell in love with these people. And though he was warned over and over again, he would have been warned, keep social distancing. They didn't call it back then, but that's what they told him to do. He would have none of it. He was right in there. He was changing their wounds, cleaning them. He was burying the dead. He was helping them to patch up their roofs. Whatever needed to be done, he was there. They weren't doctors, so they gave him some training on how to help the people. There was also a lot of lawlessness that was there. And so, with amazing courage, he rescued prostitutes. Amazing over and over again, his incredible faith, his saying yes to the Lord over and over again in the most difficult of situations. And when I was reading his story, I thought to myself, what do you really have to complain about, Rick? What do you really have to complain about? Even when we were having to stay in our houses, I have a nice house. You know, he was truly amazing. And I'm sure there were times where he was challenged in his faith. I'm sure there were times where he was overwhelmed with all the different storms that were happening, not literal storms, but all the storms on the island, the difficulties, the challenges, the crosses in life. I want to read to you what he wrote when he found out that he himself came down with leprosy. The leprous marks were discovered on my left cheek and ear. My eyebrows are beginning to fall out. Soon I will be disfigured entirely. Having no doubts about the true nature of my disease, I am calm, resigned, and very happy in the midst of my people. God certainly knows what is best for my holiness, and I gladly repeat, thy will be done. In our gospel today, we have St. Peter. And when I was meditating on this, it's funny how different things strike you at different times. And I'm picturing Peter in the boat, the other apostles, the storm, and Jesus is walking out to them, and they're afraid, as we heard in the gospel today, is it a ghost? And then I thought to myself, Peter was very bold. If it is you, Lord, have me come out and walk over to you. And I thought to myself, now, in Peter's shoes, I would have said, if it is you, Lord, come in the boat. It's safe here. There's a seat right here for you. We'll get a cushion. So Peter shows that he has this boldness. He has this faith that is there. But it's an incredible, beautiful story because we're reminded of our weaknesses. We're reminded of our frailty, even of our faith. With great boldness, imagine him taking that first step. Can you imagine him that first step, the next step going, I'm on water. I didn't sink. And taking a couple more steps towards Jesus, but then the wind, the waves, the storm begin to have him take his eyes off of Jesus. And it's immediate. He sinks. I imagine it happens so fast, but doesn't that also happen to us? When we take our eyes off of Jesus, it doesn't take very long before we begin to sink. It doesn't take very long before we begin to be overwhelmed, to lose our groundedness and of our faith. And so how quickly he begins to fall. But Jesus is there. His presence is with him. He reaches down, picks him up. And though I have a hard time with these words of Jesus, but I kind of saw them in a new way this past weekend. Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? You know, I think that it's challenging for me because I think of all the times that I doubt, how many times I sink. And so the words kind of hurt a little bit. I can hear them very loudly. He's saying it to Peter, but I hear him saying it to myself. But when I was meditating this week on it, I heard something differently. They became words of mercy, right? Because Jesus didn't say afterwards, well, Peter, why did you doubt? You were going to be the first pope, and you blew it. You don't have faith, so I'm going to have to find someone else. He continued with the plan. And so the same thing with us. Even when we doubt, even when we sink, Jesus continues. He has a plan for you. He has a plan for me. And even when we fail, that plan doesn't stop. He doesn't erase it. And so they're actually words of mercy. Why did you doubt? I know, Lord, I did it again. I doubted. But with you, I can begin again. There can be so many reasons, especially in this year. A lot of people lately that I've met with and talked with are so filled with worry and anxiety. And I keep telling them, well, there's a lot to be anxious about. This year has been a year of great anxiety. But it's the same Lord in the midst of those storms that says, come. Whether there's storms in the world or in our politics or in our church or in our individual lives, the same Jesus says, come. And how do we stay focused on him? Well, we have a sense of that in our first reading today. And it comes from Elijah on Mount Horeb. The Lord said to him, God said to him, go outside and stand on the mountain before the Lord. The Lord will be passing by. Now God was telling him, he was giving him a hint, God will be coming. He's here. A strong and heavy wind was rending the mountains and crushing rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake there was fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire there was a tiny whispering sound. And when he heard this, Elijah hid his face in his cloak and went and stood at the entrance of the cave. We need prayer. And the gospel today begins with Jesus going to pray. And then it got interrupted, just like our prayers always get interrupted. It got interrupted because the apostles were in trouble. But then afterwards, Jesus goes and prays again. He shows us the importance of prayer. And just this simple message. Elijah heard God in the quiet. Sometimes we get too overwhelmed with my prayer technique. How do I pray? There's all kinds of books. Google it. You're going to find thousands of books on how to pray. Be quiet. Go sit away. 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Don't worry about any form. Just say, Jesus, I'm here. Speak to me. Be quiet. And allow God in. And you might say, well, I can't concentrate. That's because we have so many distractions in our lives. Let him take those away so that he can rest with you in your hearts. Peter would learn this. With all the mistakes that Peter made, this is what, as Pope, he said to the church. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God. Just go be with God for a little bit of quiet. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, and in due time he may exalt you. Cast all your anxieties on him, for he cares about you. Cast all your anxieties upon him, for he cares about you.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui